These and all other managerial accounting problems can be found in Sarai's studies. The link is in the description box below. So the way that I do these problems is I ignore absolutely everything I see and I straight up read the question. They're asking me, should blah 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 company close the store? So I already know this is an add or drop decision in chapter 12. In other words, an open or close decision. So they just want to know if we should close a New York store. If yes, how much are they saving if they close the store? One thing to note before we start is look at the operating income. For the New Jersey store, we have positive operating income, so we're making some money. But the New York store is losing money. So shouldn't we just say, of course, we should close the New York store because we're losing money? Isn't it obvious? Well, the answer is not as obvious because you have to think of the possibility that if we close the store, we could be losing more money than if we were to just keep it open. And so that's why we do these problems to figure out if we should really close it or not. If we close the New York store, I'm going to be missing out on $105,000 of revenue because there's going to be no money being made from the store since it's closed. However, I'm going to be saving $60,000 in costs of the goods sold because I'm not selling any goods. I'm going to be saving $7,000 in rent because there's no store to rent since it's going to be closed. I'm going to be saving $30,000 in labor costs because there's going to be no labor since the store is, again, closed. We'll come back to depreciation of equipment. I'm going to be saving $3,400 in utilities because I'm not going to be using any water, any gas, any electricity since the store is, again, closed. And then we have these two over here. So for depreciation of equipment, think about it. You're closing the store. You're not selling the equipment. That equipment, you still own it. And because you still own it, it's still going to depreciate. So you don't touch this number and you don't gain that, you don't lose that, nothing happens. That's still equipment that's depreciating, unless they tell you otherwise. Then we have allocated corporate overhead. So remember, we have overhead costs that are allocated to store 1 and store 2. If we close store 2, that does not mean that the overhead goes away. It just simply means that the overhead is allocated now to store 1. Like store 1, it will carry the burden of paying all of the overhead. It's literally just going to go whoop to store 1. Unless they tell you otherwise, which they do. They tell us that if we close the New York store, then allocated corporate overhead will decrease by $2,000. So remember, overhead is a cost. So if they're telling us that our costs are decreasing when we close the store, then that means we're going to gain back that amount. We're going to gain $2,000 when we close the store. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say plus $2,000. This does not mean add $6,000 plus $2,000. It does not mean add $2,000 plus $2,000. It does not mean add $8,000 plus $2,000. It literally just means add $2,000 with the rest of your stuff. Don't touch allocated overhead ever. Now what you do is you add your greens and you subtract your reds. So if I add all my greens, that's $102,400, and then what I'm going to miss out on is $105,000. If I take the difference between those, so minus 105, that is negative $2,600. Remember, parentheses just means negative, meaning that I'm losing, if I close the store, I'm losing $2,600. But notice, if I keep the store open, I'm going to lose more. So guess what? It's better to close the store because I'm going to be saving the difference, $3,400 minus $2,600, that's $800. So I'm going to be saving $800. I'm still losing money, but if I close the store, I'm going to be losing $800 less. In other words, the answer is B. I'm going to be saving $800. So we close the New York store because we're losing less money if we do, and to be specific, we're losing $800 less than if we were to keep the store open, aka we save $800.